I'm Jessica, 27, and I thought I understood exactly where I stood in the Mitchell family hierarchy until this year's forgotten birthday revealed a family secret so devastating that it would expose 27 years of lies, manipulation, and financial fraud that made their golden child favoritism look like child's play. What they didn't know was that while they were busy planning my brother Ryan's elaborate 25th birthday celebration, complete with a $15,000 party budget they claimed they couldn't afford for mine, I had discovered documents that would destroy everything they thought they controlled about our family's legacy and wealth. Before we dive into this explosive tale of family betrayal that'll make you question everything about birth order favoritism, I'm dying to know, what do you think my family's reaction was when they realized their disappointment daughter held the keys to everything they valued most? Drop your wildest theories in the comments. If you've ever been the forgotten child in a family that plays favorites, smash that like button and subscribe because this story of ultimate sibling revenge is about to reveal why some families create their own karma in the most spectacular way possible. Growing up as the older sister in the Mitchell household meant living in the shadow of my younger brother Ryan, who from the moment he was born seemed to possess some magical quality that made our parents forget I existed. The favoritism wasn't subtle or hidden, it was blatant, systematic, and so deeply embedded in our family dynamics that even extended relatives accepted it as natural that Ryan deserved more attention, resources, and celebration than his older sister. The birthday disparity was just the most visible symbol of a family structure that had been designed around Ryan's comfort and success from day one. Every year on March 15th, my parents would orchestrate elaborate celebrations for Ryan that resembled royal coronations more than typical birthday parties. Professional decorators, catered meals, guest lists that included everyone from school friends to family business associates, and gift presentations that looked like Christmas morning multiplied by 10. My birthday, exactly 6 months later on September 15th, was invariably forgotten until the last minute, then acknowledged with hastily purchased gifts and apologetic explanations about busy schedules, work conflicts, and budget constraints. The contrast was so stark that by the time I turned 16, I had stopped expecting anything and started planning my own quiet celebrations to avoid the disappointment of waiting for acknowledgement that never came. "Oh sweetie, we've been so overwhelmed with work lately," my mother would say when she finally remembered my birthday on September 16th or 17th. "You know how busy September is for the business. But we'll make it up to you, I promise." The promises were never kept, but the pattern repeated every year with clockwork consistency. Ryan's birthday parties evolved into increasingly expensive productions as we got older. His 16th birthday featured a live band, professional photography, and a guest list of over 100 people. His 18th birthday was held at a country club with a sit-down dinner that cost more than most people's weddings. His 21st birthday was a weekend-long celebration that included a rented yacht and accommodations for out-of-town guests. Meanwhile, my 16th birthday was acknowledged 3 days later with dinner at a chain restaurant and a gift card to a clothing store. My 18th birthday was forgotten entirely during Ryan's college orientation week, then celebrated with a grocery store cake and promises that we'd do something special when things calmed down. My 21st birthday coincided with Ryan's midterm exams, so the family focus was on supporting his academic success rather than acknowledging my milestone. The financial disparity extended far beyond birthday celebrations into every aspect of our upbringing and education. Ryan attended private schools from kindergarten through high school, participated in expensive sports programs, received tutoring and test preparation services, and ultimately attended an elite private university with full financial support from our parents. His college experience included study abroad programs, internships that required family financial support, and graduate school funding that totaled well over $200,000. My educational journey was a constant negotiation for basic resources. Public schools were deemed perfectly adequate for my needs, extracurricular activities were evaluated based on cost rather than my interests, and my college choices were limited to state universities where I could minimize expenses through scholarships and part-time work. When I suggested studying abroad or pursuing graduate school, the family response was always about fiscal responsibility and not taking on unnecessary debt. "Jessica, we've always taught you to be practical and independent," my father would explain when I asked why Ryan's educational opportunities were so different from mine. "You're smart enough to succeed without all the extra support that Ryan needs. He's always required more guidance and resources to reach his potential." The message was clear: Ryan's success required family investment, while my achievements were expected to be self-funded and self-directed. The golden child needed support and encouragement, while the older sister needed to learn independence and resilience. The psychological impact of this differential treatment was devastating, but it was presented as character building rather than neglect. Our family business, Mitchell and Associates Real Estate Development, was always understood to be Ryan's inheritance and future career path. From childhood, Ryan was included in business discussions, taken to construction sites, introduced to clients and partners, and gradually groomed to take over the company that our grandfather had founded and our father had expanded into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. I expressed interest in the family business during high school, even completing internships at local real estate firms to build relevant experience. But my involvement was always characterized as temporary helping out rather than serious career preparation. When I suggested studying business in college with the goal of joining the company after graduation, the response was lukewarm at best. "The real estate development business is very demanding, Jessica," my mother explained. "It requires long hours, travel, and dealing with difficult clients and contractors. We've always thought you'd be happier in something more suitable to your personality, like teaching or social work." The subtext was unmistakable: the family business was too important and complex for someone like me, while Ryan was naturally suited for the leadership and responsibility that came with inheriting a successful company. My interests and aptitudes were irrelevant compared to the predetermined plan for Ryan to assume control of the family legacy. The social dynamics within our extended family reflected and reinforced the favoritism that dominated our household. During family gatherings, conversations revolved around Ryan's achievements, future plans, and latest accomplishments. Aunts and uncles would ask detailed questions about his college experience, his career preparations, and his thoughts on various topics. I was typically relegated to helping with food service and cleanup while the adults discussed important family matters. When I did receive attention from extended family, it was usually in the context of my role as Ryan's supportive older sister. "Jessica must be so proud of Ryan's success," relatives would comment. "It's wonderful how she's always been there to help and encourage him." The assumption that my primary value was as Ryan's cheerleader rather than as an individual with my own goals and achievements was accepted by everyone as natural family dynamics. The psychological toll of being systematically overlooked and undervalued while watching my younger brother receive constant celebration and support was profound. I developed patterns of self-doubt, people-pleasing, and overachievement that were designed to earn the recognition and approval that came naturally to Ryan but remained perpetually out of reach for me. But what I didn't understand until much later was that the favoritism wasn't just about personality preferences or birth order dynamics. There were deeper, darker secrets about our family structure and Ryan's place in it that explained why my parents were so invested in his success and so willing to sacrifice my happiness to ensure his comfort. The truth about why Ryan received such different treatment, why the family business was exclusively his inheritance, and why my birthday was consistently forgotten while his was celebrated like a national holiday would eventually come to light in the most shocking way possible. But first, I had to survive another year of watching my family plan his elaborate celebration while pretending mine didn't exist. The planning for Ryan's 25th birthday began in January, 4 months before the actual date, with the kind of military precision usually reserved for state dinners or royal weddings. My mother transformed our dining room table into mission control for what she described as Ryan's quarter-century celebration, complete with vendor catalogs, budget spreadsheets, and timeline charts that detailed every aspect of what would become the most expensive birthday party in our family's history. "This is a milestone birthday," she explained when I walked in on one of her planning sessions with the event coordinator she'd hired. 25 is when Ryan really becomes an adult, when he starts taking on serious responsibilities with the business. "We want to celebrate this transition properly." The irony that I had turned 25 2 years earlier without any acknowledgement of my own transition to adulthood was apparently lost on her, but it wasn't lost on me. The woman who had forgotten my birthday consistently for 27 years was now treating Ryan's 25th as an event worthy of professional planning and unlimited financial resources. The budget for Ryan's party was revealed during a family dinner in February when my father proudly announced that they were investing $15,000 in making this celebration truly memorable. The figure was announced with the same pride that other parents might reserve for announcing college scholarships or career achievements, as if spending enormous amounts of money on a birthday party was itself an accomplishment worthy of family recognition. $15,000? I asked, unable to hide my shock at the amount. "For a birthday party?" "For Ryan's birthday party," my mother corrected, emphasizing his name as if that explained the extravagant budget. "This isn't just any birthday. This is Ryan's 25th, and it deserves to be celebrated in a way that reflects how important he is to our family and our future." The planning details were shared with obvious excitement and pride. The venue would be the ballroom at the city's most exclusive hotel. The catering would feature a 7-course tasting menu designed by a chef who had appeared on multiple cooking shows. The entertainment would include a jazz quartet for cocktail hour and a live band for dancing. Professional photographers would document every moment, and the guest list would include over 150 people ranging from family friends to business associates who needed to witness Ryan's importance in our family hierarchy. "We're having custom invitations designed and printed," my mother continued, showing me samples that looked more like wedding invitations than birthday announcements. "And we've arranged for hotel accommodations for out-of-town guests who want to make a weekend of celebrating Ryan." The attention to detail was staggering and represented months of planning and coordination that I had never seen directed toward any other family event. Every aspect of the party was designed to showcase Ryan as the crown prince of the Mitchell family empire, the heir apparent whose 25th birthday marked his official transition to adult successor. But what made this year's celebration particularly painful was the timing of my own recent birthday disappointment. Just 6 months earlier, my 27th birthday had been forgotten until 3 days after the actual date, then acknowledged with a grocery store cake and apologies about how busy everyone had been with Ryan's graduate school applications and interview preparations. "I'm sorry we missed your actual birthday, sweetie," my mother had said while cutting the hastily purchased cake. "You know how stressful this time of year is with Ryan's future being decided. But 27 isn't really a milestone birthday anyway, so we can celebrate whenever it's convenient." The contrast between the months of planning for Ryan's milestone 25th and the afterthought treatment of my 27th was so stark that even I, accustomed to being overlooked, was stunned by the blatant favoritism. But this year's planning process revealed something even more disturbing about our family dynamics. During one of my mother's planning sessions, I overheard a phone conversation that stopped me cold. She was speaking with someone about transferring funds from what she called Jessica's trust account to cover some of the party expenses that had exceeded their original budget. "We'll need to move about $3,000 from the other account to cover the upgraded photography package," she said. "It's not like she'll ever need to know about it, and this party is more important for the family's image." Jessica's trust account. I had never heard of any trust account in my name, had never been told that I had access to funds that required transferring for Ryan's benefit. The casual way my mother discussed using money that apparently belonged to me to fund my brother's party was shocking enough, but the implication that there were family financial arrangements I knew nothing about was even more disturbing. That night, I began researching trust accounts, inheritance laws, and family financial structures online, trying to understand what my mother's phone conversation might have meant. What I discovered was that many wealthy families establish trust funds for their children, often with specific rules about when and how the money can be accessed. The possibility that I had a trust account that my family was managing without my knowledge, and apparently using for Ryan's benefit, was both infuriating and confusing. If such an account existed, why hadn't I been told about it? Why wasn't I involved in decisions about how the money was used? And why was it apparently being treated as a family resource rather than my individual inheritance? My attempts to ask casual questions about family finances were met with dismissive responses and subject changes that suggested I was prying into matters that weren't my concern. When I asked my father about college savings accounts and inheritance planning during a family dinner, his response was sharp and final. "Jessica, those aren't appropriate topics for dinner conversation. Your mother and I handle all the family financial planning, and you don't need to worry about those details. Focus on building your own career and financial independence." But Ryan was regularly included in discussions about business finances, investment strategies, and long-term family planning. The double standard was glaring. Ryan needed to understand family money management as preparation for his inheritance, while I needed to mind my own business and focus on self-sufficiency. The breakthrough came when I decided to visit our family's longtime accountant, Harold Morrison, under the pretense of needing advice about tax preparation for my freelance graphic design work. Harold had handled our family's financial affairs for over 30 years and had known me since childhood. "Jessica. How wonderful to see you," he greeted me warmly. "I was just reviewing some of your account statements for the quarterly reports. Your trust has been performing very well, much better than Ryan's actually." My trust. Ryan's trust. Harold was speaking casually about financial accounts that I had never been told existed, as if I should be familiar with quarterly reports and investment performance. "Harold, I have to ask you something, and I hope you won't think I'm being inappropriate. But I'm not sure I understand all the details about my trust account. Could you help me understand how it works?" His expression shifted from friendly to confused. "Jessica, surely your parents have discussed the trust structure with you. You're 27 now, which means you've had full access to your account information for 2 years. Full access for 2 years. I had apparently been entitled to information about my own money for 2 years without knowing it, while my parents continued to make decisions about my financial resources without my involvement or consent. Harold, I think there might be some confusion in our family about the trust arrangements. Would it be possible for you to show me the current statements and explain how everything is structured?" What Harold revealed during that meeting would change everything I thought I knew about our family's financial arrangements and the reasons for the dramatic favoritism that had shaped my entire life. But first, I had to survive watching my family throw a $15,000 party for Ryan while using my own money to pay for it, all while treating me like an unwelcome observer to his celebration. The betrayal was about to get much deeper than forgotten birthdays and golden child favoritism. Harold Morrison's office felt like stepping into a time capsule of family financial history, with filing cabinets that contained decades of documents chronicling the Mitchell family's business success and wealth accumulation. As he pulled out folders labeled with both Ryan's and my name, I realized I was about to learn information that my parents had kept hidden from me for my entire adult life. "Let me show you the trust structure that your grandfather established," Harold said, spreading documents across his desk with the practiced efficiency of someone who had explained these arrangements many times before. "When you and Ryan were born, your grandfather created identical trust funds for both of you, funded with equal amounts and managed according to the same terms." Identical trust funds. Equal amounts. The words hit me like a physical blow as I realized that the financial favoritism I had observed throughout my childhood wasn't based on different levels of family investment. It was based on my parents' decision to manage equal resources in completely different ways. "Harold, can you tell me the current balance in my trust account?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. He consulted his computer screen and smiled. As of the last quarterly report, your trust is valued at approximately $847,000. It's been managed very conservatively, which has resulted in steady growth over the years. $847,000. I had been living paycheck to paycheck as a freelance graphic designer, worrying about rent payments and student loan debts, while having access to nearly $1 million that my family had never mentioned. What about Ryan's trust? I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer would reveal the source of his endless financial support. Harold's expression shifted slightly. Ryan's trust has a current balance of approximately $312,000. It's been more actively utilized over the years for educational expenses, living costs, and various other approved expenditures. The mathematics were startling. Ryan had spent over $500,000 more from his trust than I had spent from mine, which was nothing, because I hadn't known it existed. The private school education, the college expenses, the study abroad programs, the graduate school funding, and countless other privileges had all been paid for with Ryan's inheritance, while mine had been growing untouched. Harold, I need to understand something. My parents have been managing both trusts, correct? Making decisions about how the money is used? Well, technically speaking, both trusts were under parental management until you each turned 25. At that point, control transferred to the beneficiaries. You've been the sole manager of your trust for 2 years now, though the account has remained with our firm for administrative convenience. Sole manager for 2 years. I had been legally entitled to access and control my trust for 24 months while my parents continued to make financial decisions on my behalf and used my money for family expenses without my knowledge or consent. Harold, are you telling me that I should have been notified when I turned 25 that control of the trust was transferring to me? His uncomfortable expression confirmed what I was beginning to suspect. Jessica, your parents assured me that they would handle the transition conversation with you. I assumed they had explained everything and that you preferred to keep the account management arrangements unchanged for convenience. My parents had received legal notification that control of my trust was transferring to me on my 25th birthday, had apparently told Harold that they would discuss the change with me, and had instead continued managing my money without my knowledge while allowing me to believe I had no family financial support. I need to see all the account activity for the past 2 years, I said, my anger building as I understood the scope of their deception. Every transaction, every transfer, every decision made with my money. The account statements Harold printed revealed a pattern of financial manipulation that was breathtaking in its scope and audacity. Over the past 2 years, my parents had transferred over $45,000 from my trust to cover various family expenses, Ryan's continuing education costs, and what were labeled as family celebration expenditures. The most recent transfer, dated just 3 weeks earlier, was for $3,000 with a notation that read our 25-party photography upgrade. They had literally used my money to pay for upgraded photography for Ryan's 25th birthday party while I remained unaware that I had money they could steal. But the transfers were just the beginning of what the account statements revealed. My parents had also been collecting the management fees that Harold's firm charged for administrative services, essentially being paid to manage money that legally belonged to me. They had been earning income from my inheritance while I struggled to pay basic living expenses. Harold, these management fees that have been paid to my parents, is that a normal arrangement for trust accounts? It can be, when the trustee is doing active management work. But Jessica, now that you're the account holder, those fees would normally be waived or paid to you if you're handling the oversight yourself. They had been collecting payment for managing money they were legally required to turn over to me 2 years earlier. The financial fraud was systematic and had been ongoing for years, disguised as family financial planning and parental guidance. I need copies of all these documents, Harold. And I need to understand what my legal options are for recovering money that was transferred without my authorization. Harold's expression was grave as he prepared copies of the account statements and trust documents. Jessica, If these transfers were made without your knowledge after you gained control of the trust, that could constitute financial fraud. You may want to consult with an attorney who specializes in family financial disputes. As I left Harold's office with copies of documents that revealed 27 years of financial deception, I understood that the birthday favoritism was just the visible symptom of a much deeper betrayal. My parents hadn't just forgotten my celebrations, they had been stealing my inheritance to fund Ryan's privileges while convincing me that I needed to be financially independent and self-sufficient. The $15,000 party they were planning for Ryan's 25th birthday wasn't just being funded by family resources. It was being funded partially with money that belonged to me, stolen from an account I didn't know existed, to celebrate the golden child whose trust had been depleted by years of excessive spending. But what made the betrayal even more devastating was realizing that my parents' treatment of me wasn't based on love, disappointment, or even favoritism. It was based on financial calculation. They had been managing me like a resource to be exploited rather than a daughter to be supported, systematically lying about family finances while using my inheritance to subsidize Ryan's lifestyle. The forgotten birthdays, the educational disparities, the exclusion from family business discussions, all of it suddenly made sense as a deliberate strategy to keep me unaware of my financial rights while maximizing their ability to redirect my resources to Ryan's benefit. As I drove home from Harold's office, I realized that Ryan's 25th birthday party in 2 weeks wasn't just going to be a celebration of golden child favoritism, it was going to be the stage for the most spectacular financial reckoning our family had ever experienced. They wanted to celebrate Ryan's transition to adulthood with my money? I was about to show them what my own transition to financial independence looked like. The 2 weeks between discovering the truth about my trust fund and Ryan's elaborate birthday celebration became the most intense planning period of my life, not for party logistics, but for orchestrating a revelation that would expose years of financial fraud and systematic favoritism in front of the 150 guests my parents had carefully selected to witness Ryan's coronation as the family golden child. My first priority was securing legal representation to understand exactly what crimes had been committed and what my options were for recovery. The attorney I consulted, Patricia Hawkins, specialized in financial elder abuse and family trust disputes, and her reaction to my documentation was both validating and alarming. "Jessica, what your parents have done constitutes several serious crimes," she explained after reviewing Harold's account statements and my trust documents. "Conversion of trust assets, breach of fiduciary duty, financial fraud, and potentially tax evasion if they haven't properly reported the management fees they've been collecting." The legal analysis confirmed what I had suspected. My parents weren't just playing favorites with birthday celebrations, they were systematically stealing from me while manipulating family dynamics to keep me unaware of the theft. The total amount of unauthorized transfers over the past 2 years exceeded $45,000, not including the management fees they had collected illegally. "What are my options for recovery?" I asked. "You can demand immediate repayment of all unauthorized transfers, plus interest and penalties. If they refuse, you can file criminal charges for financial fraud and pursue civil litigation for damages. But Jessica, there's also the nuclear option. You can revoke their access to your account immediately and demand a full forensic audit of all transactions since the trust was established." The nuclear option. It was exactly what this situation required, but I wanted the timing to be perfect. Instead of confronting my parents privately and giving them the opportunity to minimize their crimes or manipulate the narrative, I decided to expose their fraud publicly during Ryan's celebration, when their hypocrisy would be most visible and undeniable. But first, I needed more evidence. If I was going to destroy their carefully constructed image as devoted parents and successful business owners, I needed documentation that would make their crimes undeniable and their excuses impossible. The breakthrough came when I gained access to my trust account online and discovered that Harold's firm maintained detailed records of every transaction, including email communications and authorization documents. What I found was a paper trail of forgery and fraud that spanned years and involved both my parents actively conspiring to steal from my inheritance. The most damaging evidence was a series of email exchanges between my parents and Harold's office for my 25th birthday period, when control of the trust should have transferred to me. Instead of notifying me about my rights and responsibilities, my parents had actively worked to conceal the transfer and maintain their unauthorized control. "Harold, we don't think Jessica is ready for the responsibility of managing her trust yet," my mother had written. "She's still figuring out her career path and doesn't have experience with financial planning. Can we continue the current arrangement for now?" Harold's response showed that he had been uncomfortable with the deception but had ultimately allowed my parents to convince him that they were acting in my best interest. "I understand your concerns, but Jessica is legally entitled to notification about the trust transfer. If you want to continue helping her with account management, that's between you and her, but she needs to be aware of her rights." My father's reply was even more damaging: "We'll handle the conversation with Jessica when the time is right. For now, let's just continue as we have been. She's better off not knowing about the trust until she's more mature." The email trail continued for months, with my parents providing various excuses for why I shouldn't be informed about my own inheritance while simultaneously authorizing transfers and expenditures that depleted my account for Ryan's benefit. They had explicitly conspired to hide my financial rights while stealing my money. But the most damaging document I discovered was a spreadsheet on my father's computer labeled Trust Management Strategy, which detailed their plans for managing both Ryan's and my inheritance. The document revealed that their treatment of our trusts wasn't based on favoritism, it was based on a calculated strategy to maximize Ryan's access to family wealth while minimizing mine. The spreadsheet included projections showing that if they could delay my knowledge of the trust until I was 30, they could redirect approximately $100,000 more from my account to cover Ryan's graduate school, his future wedding, and his initial business investment in the family company. They had been planning to steal from me for years into the future. Armed with this evidence, I finalized my plan for Ryan's birthday revelation. Instead of simply confronting my parents about their fraud, I would expose their crimes in front of their carefully curated guest list of family friends, business associates, and community leaders who had been invited to witness Ryan's importance. Working with Patricia Hawkins, I prepared a presentation that would systematically reveal the financial fraud, the forged authorizations, and the systematic theft that had funded Ryan's privileges at my expense. The evidence would be presented as a surprise tribute to family financial planning, giving me the perfect opportunity to reveal the truth before my parents could control the narrative or minimize their crimes. I also arranged for additional surprises that would maximize the impact of my revelation. Patricia would attend the party as my legal representation, ready to serve formal notice of the criminal charges I was filing. Harold Morrison would be present to confirm the authenticity of the financial documents and explain the trust structures to any guests who questioned the evidence. You know what's incredible about planning your own justice? There's something so empowering about taking control of a situation where you've been powerless for so long, where you've been made to feel like you're asking for too much when you were actually asking for basic fairness. I can feel my heart racing just thinking about how this revelation is going to unfold. What do you think my parents' faces will look like when they realize their disappointment daughter is about to expose everything they've hidden? And if you're as invested in this family financial fraud as I am, make sure you hit that subscribe button because the next part is going to show you exactly how elaborate lies crumble when confronted with undeniable evidence. But perhaps the most satisfying element of my plan was the timing. My parents had scheduled Ryan's milestone celebration for March 15th, exactly 6 months before my own birthday. This year, instead of waiting for them to forget my September celebration, I was going to ensure that Ryan's party became a birthday they would never forget, for all the wrong reasons. The invitations had promised an elegant celebration of Ryan's 25th birthday and his bright future with the family business. What the guests would actually witness was the spectacular destruction of my parents' reputation and the revelation that their golden child's success had been built on systematic theft from their forgotten daughter. As I put the finishing touches on my presentation and confirmed the arrangements with my attorney, I reflected on the irony of the situation. My parents had spent months planning Ryan's party to showcase his importance and their success as a family. Instead, they had unwittingly provided me with the perfect stage to expose their crimes and reclaim the financial independence they had stolen from me. The woman they had trained to be grateful for scraps was about to serve them a feast of consequences they would never forget. Ryan's 25th birthday would indeed be a milestone, the day our family's lies finally caught up with them. The grand ballroom at the Fairmont Hotel looked exactly like the fairy tale setting my parents had envisioned for Ryan's 25th birthday celebration. Crystal chandeliers cast elegant light over round tables adorned with elaborate floral centerpieces, while a jazz quartet provided sophisticated background music for the cocktail hour that preceded dinner. The guest list read like a who's who of our city's business and social elite, exactly the audience my parents wanted to witness Ryan's anointing as the heir apparent to the Mitchell family empire. I arrived fashionably on time, dressed in the elegant black cocktail dress I had purchased specifically for this occasion, using money from my own trust account, which I had finally accessed after 27 years of being told it didn't exist. The symbolic power of wearing something bought with my own previously stolen money while preparing to expose my parents' crimes was not lost on me. Ryan looked every inch the celebrated golden child in his custom-tailored tuxedo, accepting congratulations and well wishes from guests who had no idea they were about to witness the most spectacular family meltdown in recent memory. My parents flanked him like proud monarchs presenting their crown prince, clearly reveling in the attention and admiration their elaborate celebration was generating. "Jessica, you look beautiful tonight," my mother gushed as I approached their receiving line, her enthusiasm obviously performative for the benefit of observing guests. "Isn't it wonderful how many people wanted to celebrate Ryan's special day?" "It certainly is impressive," I replied with a smile that felt genuinely warm for the first time in months. "I can't wait to share some special thoughts about our family during the tribute portion of the evening." The tribute portion had been my suggestion during the party planning process. A brief opportunity for family members to make speeches celebrating Ryan and reflecting on family values. My parents had loved the idea, probably envisioning tearful testimonies about Ryan's accomplishments and their success as loving, supportive parents. As dinner progressed through its 7 carefully crafted courses, I watched the assembled guests enjoy themselves while having no idea that they were about to witness a different kind of entertainment than they had anticipated. Business associates praised my father's leadership and vision, family friends complimented my mother's party planning skills, and everyone seemed genuinely impressed by the expense and elegance of the celebration. The moment I had been planning for weeks arrived when my father stood to begin the tribute presentations. Before we moved to dancing and further celebration, we wanted to take a few minutes to reflect on what makes this milestone birthday so special for our family, he announced, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who had never doubted his control over family narratives. Ryan's best friend spoke first, sharing amusing college stories and predictions about Ryan's bright future in the family business. A family friend followed with observations about what a devoted son Ryan had always been and how proud his parents should be of the young man they had raised. The speeches were warm, genuine, and exactly what my parents had hoped to hear about their golden child. And now, my father announced with obvious pride, Ryan's sister Jessica would like to share some thoughts about our family. I stood up slowly, savoring the moment of transition from forgotten daughter to the person who controlled what happened next in our family story. Patricia Hawkins, my attorney, was seated at a nearby table and gave me an encouraging nod. Harold Morrison, the family accountant, was also present and had agreed to verify any financial information I presented. "Thank you, Dad. It's such an honor to be included in this celebration of family values and Ryan's bright future," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the ballroom's excellent sound system. I've spent a lot of time lately reflecting on our family dynamics, and I discovered some fascinating information that I think everyone here would find interesting. I moved to the small podium that had been set up for the tribute speakers, pulling out the folder of documents I had carefully prepared for this presentation. You see, I recently learned something amazing about our family's financial planning that I had never been told before. The first hint of concern flickered across my mother's face, but she maintained her proud smile as I continued. It turns out that when Ryan and I were born, our grandfather established identical trust funds for both of us. Equal amounts, equal terms, equal opportunities for financial security and success. Murmurs of interest rippled through the audience as guests registered this information about family wealth they hadn't been aware of. Trust funds were impressive markers of family success, and my parents looked pleased that I was highlighting our grandfather's generosity and foresight. What I found truly remarkable, I continued, consulting my prepared notes, was learning about how these equal trusts have been managed over the years. Ryan's trust, which started with the same amount as mine, has been actively used to fund his private education, college expenses, study abroad programs, graduate school, and various other opportunities that helped him become the successful young man we're celebrating tonight. Ryan looked proud and slightly embarrassed by the public acknowledgement of the family financial support that had made his achievements possible. My parents seemed pleased that I was highlighting their generous investment in their son's success. My trust, on the other hand, had never been mentioned to me. In fact, until 2 weeks ago, I had no idea it existed. The change in tone was subtle, but I could see my parents beginning to realize that this tribute was not going in the direction they had anticipated. I discovered that according to trust law, control of my account should have transferred to me on my 25th birthday, 2 years ago. But instead of being notified about my inheritance, my parents continued to manage the money without my knowledge. The murmur from the audience was different now, confusion rather than admiration as they began to understand that this family tribute was revealing information that perhaps should have been handled privately. What makes this particularly interesting, I said, pulling out Harold's account statements, is that over the past 2 years, my parents have transferred over $45,000 from my trust account to cover various expenses, including approximately $3,000 for upgraded photography for tonight's celebration. The silence that followed was deafening. You could hear the clink of silverware being set down as guests processed what I had just revealed. My parents' expressions had shifted from proud smiles to something approaching panic as they realized I was exposing financial fraud in front of their most important business and social contacts. "Jessica," my father interrupted, his voice tight with warning, "perhaps this isn't the appropriate time for family financial discussions." "Oh, but I think it's the perfect time," I replied smoothly, maintaining the same warm tone I'd used throughout the evening. After all, we're celebrating family values and Ryan's transition to adulthood. What better time to discuss how our family handles money and responsibility? I turned back to the captivated audience, many of whom were leaning forward in their chairs, clearly fascinated by this unexpected turn in the evening's entertainment. You see, while Ryan was receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars from his trust for education and opportunities, I was working multiple jobs to pay for state university and being told that learning financial independence was important for my character development. The hypocrisy was now visible to everyone in the room, and I could see guests exchanging glances as they began to understand the full scope of the differential treatment I was describing. But the most interesting part, I continued, consulting my documents with the calm professionalism of someone presenting a business report, is that my parents have been collecting management fees for administering a trust account that legally became mine 2 years ago. They've been earning money from managing money they were legally required to turn over to me. Harold Morrison stood up from his table, clearly uncomfortable but recognizing his obligation to confirm the accuracy of my statements. "I can verify that the trust arrangements Jessica is describing are accurate according to our firm's records." My mother finally found her voice, though it came out higher than her usual confident tone. "Jessica, you're embarrassing the family." This is Ryan's celebration, not the time for airing private financial matters. You're absolutely right, Mom, I said with apparent agreement. This is Ryan's celebration. So let's talk about exactly how much of my money went into making it possible. I pulled out a detailed breakdown that I had prepared specifically for this moment. The venue rental, the catering, the live music, the professional photography, the custom invitations, the floral arrangements. According to my calculations, approximately $6,000 of tonight's celebration was funded directly from my trust account without my knowledge or authorization. The mathematics were devastating because they were so specific and verifiable. This wasn't emotional family drama, this was documented financial fraud with dollar amounts and transaction dates that could be independently confirmed. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, addressing the audience directly, you're not just attending Ryan's birthday party. You're attending a celebration that was partially funded by money stolen from the daughter who wasn't even invited to help plan her own brother's celebration. The word stolen hung in the air like a bomb that had just exploded. Using that term in front of their business associates and community leaders was social and professional suicide for my parents, but it was also the accurate legal description of what they had done. Jessica. Ryan finally spoke, his voice carrying genuine shock and confusion. What are you talking about? Mom and Dad have been managing our trust accounts responsibly. They wouldn't steal from you. It was the perfect opening for the most damaging revelation of all. Ryan, I'm glad you brought up responsible management. Let me show everyone exactly how responsibly they've been handling our equal inheritance. I pulled out the comparative account statements that told the complete story in stark financial terms. Ryan's trust, which started with the same amount as mine, currently has a balance of $312,000. My trust, which I learned about 2 weeks ago, has a balance of $847,000. The numbers were so clear and shocking that several guests gasped audibly. Ryan had spent over $500,000 more than I had spent, because I hadn't known my money existed. The reason my trust balance is so much higher isn't because I'm more financially responsible, I continued. It's because I didn't know I had money to spend. While Ryan was attending private schools, studying abroad, and having his graduate education funded by his inheritance, I was told that learning to be self-sufficient was important for my character. Patricia Hawkins stood up from her table, introducing herself to the room with professional authority. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Patricia Hawkins, Jessica's attorney. What she's describing tonight constitutes several serious crimes, including financial fraud, conversion of trust assets, and breach of fiduciary duty. The presence of an attorney at a birthday party was unprecedented and made it clear to everyone that this wasn't just family drama, this was a legal matter with criminal implications. Tomorrow morning, Patricia continued, we'll be filing formal charges against Jessica's parents for the unauthorized use of trust funds and the systematic theft of her inheritance. We'll also be demanding immediate repayment of all unauthorized transfers, plus interest and penalties. My father made one last desperate attempt to control the narrative. This is ridiculous. We've been managing Jessica's money for her own good. She's never shown interest in financial planning, and we were protecting her from making poor decisions. Protecting me? I asked, my voice finally showing some of the anger I had been controlling all evening. By lying to me about my own inheritance for 2 years after I legally gained control of it? By using my money to fund Ryan's privileges while telling me I needed to learn independence? I turned to address Ryan directly, seeing the genuine shock and confusion in his expression as he began to understand the scope of what our parents had done. Ryan, I don't blame you for accepting the opportunities you were given. You didn't know they were paying for your education and experiences with money they were stealing from me. But now you do know. The question is what you're going to do about it. The ballroom was completely silent as 150 guests absorbed the full implications of what they had witnessed. The elegant celebration of family success had become the public exposure of financial fraud and systematic favoritism that had been hidden behind closed doors for years. In conclusion, I said, returning to the podium microphone for my final remarks, I want to thank my parents for providing me with the perfect opportunity to reclaim my financial independence and expose the truth about our family dynamics. Tonight's party has indeed been a milestone celebration, the night that 27 years of lies finally caught up with the people who told them. I gathered my documents and walked toward the exit, pausing only to address the stunned audience one more time. For those of you who are wondering about your own family financial planning and trust management, I highly recommend working with qualified professionals who believe in transparency and honesty. Harold Morrison's firm is excellent, assuming your parents aren't actively committing fraud. As I left the ballroom with Patricia Hawkins beside me, I could hear the explosion of conversation that erupted behind us. The carefully curated guest list that was supposed to witness Ryan's coronation had instead witnessed the complete destruction of my parents' reputation and the exposure of crimes that would have serious legal and social consequences. The forgotten daughter had finally found her voice, and the birthday celebration would be remembered for all the wrong reasons by everyone who attended. My parents had spent months planning the perfect party to showcase their family's success. Instead, they had provided me with the perfect audience for their downfall. The 48 hours following Ryan's birthday revelation were a whirlwind of legal action, media attention, and family crisis management that exceeded even my most optimistic expectations for consequences. The story of parents stealing from their daughter's trust fund to pay for their son's elaborate birthday party was exactly the kind of scandal that captured public imagination, and by Monday morning, our family drama had become front-page news in the local business journal. Prominent real estate developer accused of trust fund fraud was the headline that greeted my father when he arrived at his office Monday morning, accompanied by a photograph from Ryan's party that showed me addressing the stunned audience while my parents looked on in horror. The article detailed the financial fraud allegations, quoted several party guests who described the shocking revelation, and included commentary from legal experts about the serious criminal charges involved in trust fund theft. The impact on Mitchell and Associates real estate development was immediate and devastating. By noon on Monday, 3 major clients had terminated their contracts, citing concerns about doing business with someone facing fraud charges. The bank that provided construction loans for my father's projects requested an emergency meeting to review the company's financial standing and leadership structure. But perhaps the most satisfying consequence was watching my parents scramble to control a narrative that had already escaped their management completely. The same people who had spent years manipulating family dynamics to maintain their preferred version of reality were suddenly powerless to stop the spread of truth about their criminal behavior. My mother called me 17 times on Monday, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails that progressed from angry accusations to tearful pleas for family reconciliation. "Jessica, you've destroyed our reputation and humiliated Ryan in front of everyone we know," she said in the first message. By the 17th call, her tone had changed completely. "Please, sweetheart, we can work this out as a family. We never meant to hurt you." My father took a different approach, attempting to minimize the legal consequences by characterizing the trust fund management as a misunderstanding rather than deliberate fraud. His attorney called Patricia Hawkins to propose a settlement that would involve repaying the unauthorized transfers without admitting criminal wrongdoing. "They're offering to return the money they stole if Jessica agrees not to pursue criminal charges," Patricia explained during our Monday afternoon meeting. "It's a typical response from people who got caught. They want to treat this like a civil dispute rather than acknowledging that they committed multiple felonies." "What do you think I should do?" I asked. "That depends on what outcome you want. If you just want your money back, we can negotiate a settlement that recovers everything they took, plus interest and penalties. But if you want actual justice and accountability for what they did to you, we should pursue the criminal charges and let the legal system run its course." The decision was easier than I had expected. 27 years of systematic mistreatment, financial theft, and emotional manipulation couldn't be resolved with a simple repayment plan. My parents needed to face genuine consequences for their crimes, both for my sake and to ensure they couldn't victimize anyone else in the future. I want to pursue the criminal charges, I told Patricia. They made deliberate choices to steal from me while lying about it for years. They need to be held accountable by the legal system, not just by family negotiation. The criminal investigation moved quickly once the district attorney's office received our formal complaint. Detective Sarah Rodriguez, who specialized in financial crimes, was assigned to the case and immediately recognized the strength of the evidence we had assembled. "Ms. Mitchell, this is one of the most well-documented fraud cases I've seen," she told me during our initial interview. "The email communications, the forged authorizations, the account statements, your parents essentially created a paper trail of every crime they committed. It's going to be very difficult for them to claim this was a misunderstanding or accident." The charges filed against my parents were comprehensive and serious: grand theft, financial elder abuse, forgery, conspiracy, and breach of fiduciary duty. Each charge carried potential prison time and substantial financial penalties that would extend far beyond simply repaying the money they had stolen. But the most unexpected development came when Ryan requested a private meeting to discuss the situation. I agreed to see him at a neutral location, curious about his perspective on learning that his privileges had been funded by theft from his sister's inheritance. "Jessica, I had no idea," he said immediately upon sitting down at the coffee shop where we met. "I swear to you, I thought Mom and Dad were funding everything from their own business profits and savings. I never would have accepted money if I'd known it was coming from your trust." His shock and distress seemed genuine, and I found myself feeling some sympathy for his position. Ryan had been the beneficiary of our parents' crimes, but he hadn't been an active participant in the fraud or deception. "Ryan, I believe that you didn't know where the money was coming from. But you did know that you were receiving very different treatment than I was. You knew that your education, opportunities, and celebrations were being funded by the family while I was told to be financially independent." "You're right," he admitted. "I knew there was favoritism, and I should have questioned why you were treated so differently. I should have stood up for you instead of just accepting the advantages I was given." The conversation continued for over an hour, during which Ryan expressed genuine remorse for the differential treatment and offered to contribute his own money toward making restitution for what our parents had stolen. It was the first time in our adult lives that we had spoken as equals rather than as golden child and forgotten daughter. "What are you going to do about the family business?" I asked, knowing that the criminal charges against our father would likely make it impossible for him to continue operating Mitchell and Associates. "I've been thinking about that a lot," Ryan said. "The company is going to struggle to survive this scandal, and honestly, I'm not sure I want to inherit a business that was built on treating you so unfairly. Maybe it's time for both of us to build our own paths instead of following the plan Mom and Dad laid out." It was a level of self-awareness and moral clarity that I hadn't expected from my brother, and it marked the beginning of a relationship between us that was based on honesty rather than family-assigned roles. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks after Ryan's birthday party, and the media attention only intensified as the legal proceedings moved forward. Local news stations covered the story as an example of financial abuse within wealthy families, and several national outlets picked up the case as a cautionary tale about trust fund management and parental authority. The most satisfying media coverage came from a feature article in the State Bar Association's professional journal, which used our case as an example of the serious legal and ethical violations involved in trust fund fraud. My father's law firm suspended him pending the outcome of the criminal trial, and the State Bar Association opened its own investigation into potential professional misconduct. But beyond the legal consequences and public humiliation, the most meaningful outcome was the restoration of my financial independence and self-worth. Having access to my inheritance for the first time allowed me to make choices based on my own goals and values rather than economic necessity. I used part of the trust money to expand my graphic design business into a full-service creative agency, hired employees, and began working on projects that I found personally meaningful rather than just financially necessary. For the first time in my adult life, I could pursue opportunities based on interest rather than desperation. The psychological impact of finally understanding that I hadn't been the family failure I'd been led to believe was equally important. Learning that my struggles with financial independence hadn't been due to personal inadequacy but to systematic theft had been both devastating and liberating. Jessica, what your parents did to you was financial abuse designed to maintain control over your life and choices, my therapist, Dr. Amanda Chan, explained during one of our sessions. Understanding that the disadvantages you experienced were artificially created, not evidence of personal failure, is crucial for your recovery and future relationships. The civil lawsuit we filed alongside the criminal charges was settled within 2 months, with my parents agreeing to repay all unauthorized transfers plus interest, penalties, and my legal costs. The total settlement exceeded $75,000, but more importantly, it included provisions that permanently banned them from any involvement in my financial affairs. As the 1-year anniversary of Ryan's infamous birthday party approached, I reflected on how completely my life had changed since that night when I decided to stop accepting family lies and start demanding accountability. The forgotten daughter had become a successful business owner, the victim of financial fraud had become an advocate for trust fund transparency, and the family disappointment had become someone who controlled her own narrative. 1 year after Ryan's 25th birthday party became the most expensive family meltdown in our city's social history, I'm sitting in my newly expanded creative agency office, writing this story while looking at the framed copy of the newspaper headline that announced my parents' conviction on multiple fraud charges. The woman who had spent 27 years being told she was the family disappointment now owns a thriving business, maintains control over her own inheritance, and has built relationships based on honesty rather than manipulation. The legal resolution of my parents' crimes took 8 months to complete, but the outcome exceeded every expectation I had for justice and accountability. Both my mother and father pled guilty to multiple felony charges including grand theft, financial fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. My father was sentenced to 18 months in minimum security prison plus 3 years of probation, while my mother received 6 months of home detention and 2 years of probation. The sentences reflected not just the financial crimes they had committed, but the systematic psychological abuse that had accompanied years of financial theft. During the sentencing hearing, Judge Maria Santos specifically addressed the emotional damage caused by their deception. The defendants didn't just steal money from their daughter, they stole her sense of reality, her confidence in her own perceptions, and her ability to trust family relationships. The impact of this abuse extends far beyond the financial losses. But perhaps the most satisfying consequence was the complete collapse of the social and professional reputation they had spent decades building. Mitchell and Associates Real Estate Development filed for bankruptcy within 6 months of my father's conviction, unable to survive the loss of clients and financing that resulted from the fraud scandal. The business that was supposed to be Ryan's inheritance simply ceased to exist. The social ostracism was equally complete. The same people who had attended Ryan's elaborate birthday party and witnessed my revelation made it clear that association with convicted fraudsters was too damaging to their own reputations. My parents went from being prominent community leaders to pariahs whose presence at social events was unwelcome and embarrassing. It's fascinating how quickly people distance themselves from scandal, my attorney Patricia Hawkins observed during one of our final meetings. The same social circle that celebrated your parents' success was eager to condemn them once their crimes were exposed. It shows how shallow those relationships really were. The most unexpected development has been the complete transformation of my relationship with Ryan. The golden child who had been groomed to inherit the family empire has instead chosen to build his own career path, deliberately distancing himself from the advantages he now understands were obtained through theft from his sister. I can't undo the privileges I received from mom and dad's crimes, he told me during one of our monthly coffee meetings that have become a new family tradition. But I can acknowledge that none of my achievements were earned fairly, and I can work to build something that's actually mine instead of something funded by money they stole from you. Ryan used his remaining trust funds to enroll in a master's program for nonprofit management, focusing his career on social services rather than real estate development. He also insisted on contributing his own money toward the restitution payments my parents owed me, even though he wasn't legally required to do so. I may not have known where the money was coming from, he said, but I knew I was receiving better treatment than you were, and I should have questioned that inequality instead of just accepting it. Our relationship now is healthier and more honest than it ever was during our childhood. We talk regularly, celebrate each other's achievements, and have built traditions like joint birthday celebrations that acknowledge both of our milestones with equal enthusiasm. For the first time in our lives, we're siblings rather than competitors for parental approval and resources. The impact on my career has been transformational in ways that extend far beyond financial security. My graphic design agency, now called Mitchell Creative Solutions, specializes in working with legal firms, victim advocacy organizations, and financial advisors who need materials that communicate complex information clearly and compassionately. The experience of surviving financial fraud has given me unique insight into how to help other victims understand their rights and options. Jessica's work has been invaluable for our clients, says Margaret Torres, director of the Financial Abuse Prevention Coalition. She understands what it feels like to be systematically deceived about money, and that experience shows in every piece she creates for us. Our materials are more effective because they're created by someone who has lived through financial abuse. I've also become a frequent speaker at conferences about estate planning, trust fund management, and family financial transparency. My story resonates with audiences because it demonstrates how financial abuse can happen in any family, regardless of wealth or education, when transparency and accountability are absent. The most important lesson I share with people, I tell audiences, is that financial secrecy within families is almost always a red flag. When parents or trustees refuse to provide clear information about trusts, inheritances, or family financial arrangements, that secrecy usually exists to hide something problematic. The speaking engagements have led to consulting opportunities with law firms and financial advisors who want to improve their practices around trust fund administration and family financial communication. I've helped develop new protocols for transparency that ensure beneficiaries are fully informed about their rights and the management of their assets. But beyond the professional success and financial security, the most meaningful change has been internal. The woman who spent years doubting her own perceptions and accepting other people's definitions of her worth has learned to trust her instincts and advocate for herself effectively. Jessica, the transformation in your confidence and self-advocacy has been remarkable to witness, Dr. Amanda Chen, my therapist, noted during one of our recent sessions. You've gone from someone who apologized for taking up space to someone who clearly articulates her needs and boundaries. That's a profound psychological recovery from years of systematic manipulation. The romantic relationship I built with David Park, an attorney who specializes in family financial disputes, is the first relationship of my adult life that's based on equality and mutual respect rather than power imbalances and emotional manipulation. Meeting someone who understands financial fraud professionally and supports my advocacy work personally has been incredibly healing. What I love about your story, David told me recently, is that you didn't just survive financial abuse, you transformed it into a mission to help other people avoid similar exploitation. You've taken something that was meant to destroy you and used it to build something meaningful. The financial settlement from my parents' crimes, combined with the growth of my trust fund and the success of my business, has given me resources that I'm using to establish a scholarship fund for young adults who have been financially abused by family members. The Jessica Mitchell Foundation for Financial Independence will provide educational funding and legal assistance for people whose families have stolen from or manipulated their financial resources. I want to help other people avoid spending decades unaware of their own rights and resources, I explained during the Foundation's launch event. Financial transparency should be a basic expectation in families, not a privilege that depends on having honest relatives. As I finish writing this story, I'm preparing for a very different kind of birthday celebration than any I experienced during my first 27 years. Tomorrow is my 28th birthday, and for the first time in my life, it will be celebrated with the same enthusiasm and financial investment that my family always reserved for Ryan's milestones. The party I'm hosting isn't designed to prove anything to the parents who spent years dismissing my worth. It's designed to celebrate how far I've come in building a life based on truth, equality, and genuine relationships. The guest list includes friends who value honesty, colleagues who respect my professional achievements, and family members who treat me as an equal rather than as an obligation. Ryan will be there, not as the golden child attending his disappointing sister's afterthought celebration, but as my brother who has learned to appreciate both of our journeys and achievements. My parents will not be invited, not out of cruelty, but because rebuilding my life has required establishing boundaries with people who have proven unwilling to treat me with basic respect and honesty. So here's my question for everyone who has followed this incredible journey from forgotten daughter to successful entrepreneur and advocate. Have you ever had to choose between maintaining family relationships and maintaining your own dignity and self-worth? Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable other people's harmful behavior, even when those people are family members who claim their mistreatment comes from love. If this story of financial fraud, family favoritism, and ultimate justice has resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about surviving family dysfunction and building authentic success. Share this with anyone who has ever been the forgotten child, the family disappointment, or the person whose achievements were dismissed while someone else received unearned praise and privileges. Tell me in the comments about a time when you had to stand up to family members who were taking advantage of you, or when you discovered that people you trusted had been lying about something important. Your stories of courage and self-advocacy might inspire someone else to investigate their own family financial arrangements or question dynamics they've been told to accept. Thank you for joining me on this journey from financial victim to empowered advocate, from forgotten daughter to successful business owner who controls her own narrative. Remember, you have the right to transparency about any financial arrangements that affect you, you have the right to question family dynamics that seem unfair, and you have the right to demand accountability from people who have taken advantage of your trust. Here's to families built on honesty rather than hierarchy, to success that's earned rather than stolen, and to the incredible strength that emerges when we refuse to accept other people's definitions of our worth. The forgotten birthday girl became someone whose story will be remembered by everyone who hears it, and whose success serves as proof that sometimes the greatest revenge is simply living well and helping others do the same. Life has taught me that the people who try to convince you that you're asking for too much are usually the people who are giving you too little. The question isn't whether you deserve better treatment, it's whether you're brave enough to demand it and build it for yourself when others refuse to provide it.